All right. Welcome back, everyone, and thanks for coming back. So let's go ahead and we're going to finish the model off in this video. We're going to set up all the details, and let's start by doing the chain because that's probably going to be one of the parts that people will want to refer back to the most. So let's put it right at the beginning of the video, and then we'll move up here and finish all this, and then we'll move into the bevels and the details and things like that to wrap up the video. Maybe even the clip and the Mickey too. So if we look at Kingdom Hearts 3, I'm just looking at the chain. It's pretty chunky. This is, there's all these different kinds of chains. Let's do something that's kind of chunky and exaggerated and heavy looking like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 links or so, and a big old fat clip. So let's do something like that. To do this, we're going to make sure we're in object mode and Shift A, go mesh, add a torus, and we'll take, if it's not already, it'll probably be set to like 12 and 40 something. Go ahead and set it to like 8 minor segments, and then 16 will be fine for this. Now our X90 to rotate it 90 degrees, go ahead and Control A, reset rotation mostly at this point, and we're going to scale it way down. And we're just going to get it a little closer to what we think it should look like. And let's go ahead and move it down. Another way we can take a look at this is that's probably okay. I'll probably just fatten it up to thicken it up. It'll be attached somewhere about here after the clip and everything goes in. I could cheat also in rotation and scale, and I could hit Shift Q in my case. Normally it would be Q. For the hard ops menu, if you have hard ops, hold Control for the array, start to drag it down, and just hit plus until we get 7 copies. And we'll see that things are going to work out okay. And we can even say, well, they'd probably be a little further away. So something like that. Let's delete our array. We could scale this up a bit, but I don't think we're going to need to. We just need to do some work on it. So anyways, hit Alt-G to move it back to the origin of the scene, and let's hit Shift-F, and let's work with this torus that we have. Now, go ahead and set your auto-smooth to something high, like 60 or above, so it's not catching, and it's just smoothing everything. You could go to 90, you could go to 180, whatever you want to do. 60 will be fine here. Now, let me show you a cool tool we haven't worked with yet. So let's do it. Let's go ahead and go into face mode, rather edge mode, and let's do it this way. Grab these edge loops. This will deform the shape only so slightly. Control B to bevel. Now, if you have a bunch of edge loops, just scroll wheel down a bunch and get it like really small. Whoops, I dropped it. I accidentally right-clicked there. We're just going to get it like crazy small, and then go ahead and, with that selection, delete the faces. And now you see there's a little bit of gap. So this should help us if we go into whatever component mode we want here, and we try to use something that's called the push-pull tool. Now, if you don't see it, it's under the shrink-fatten tool. Just hold down left-click and go to the pull tool, and then start pulling on it, and then hit Z. And you'll see that what it does is it starts to push or pull things in the axis that you define. In this case, I'm hitting Z. It could be X or whatever. And what it's doing is it's doing it without messing up the volume. If I hit SZ to scale, you'll see it's messing up our volume, whereas this tool doesn't. It just simply pushes them away. So this is exactly what we want. Go ahead and grab edge mode. Whoops, get rid of that tool. And go back to your select tool and grab these edges and right click and bridge edge loops, and same thing here. Now we can Shift R to redo the last thing. Now that chain looks about the right dimensions there. That looks good. So let's move it over. Only thing we might do is we might beef it up later, but we can always do that later. I could show you how right now in case we don't. Select all of the faces, hit Alt-S, and that's your shrink fatten tool there. So that's the one that's right here. And what that does is it pushes it out along the normals, and the hotkey for that is going to be Alt-S. So we could do that and go the other way, Alt-S, and start to push it out just a little bit while holding Shift and just fatten that chain link up, whatever. However you want to go. Now go ahead and hit Shift D, still in edit mode, and just go up in the Z till they pretty much touch right here in this middle part. GZ maybe a little bit closer, and then go ahead and GZ90. Oops, no, I'm sorry. RZ90. We're going to rotate in 90 degrees, or rotate it 90 degrees, whatever your preferred method of doing that is. All right, cool. So now we have the chain links pattern that will repeat for us. And let's go ahead and just to make sure rotation and scale, reset it again. All right, Now, next thing we're going to do is disclaimer. If you want more control over this, use a Bezier curve. Okay. I'm not going to use a Bezier curve. I'm going to use a path because I don't want to deal with the handles for the sake of the tutorial. But in my original demo, I did use a Bezier curve because you'll get a lot more control when we want to pose this chain out. But a path will be fine for what we're going to do here. So R, Y, 90, and you'll see we have a giant curve here. Now, I'm pretty sure I could just S, Z, and scale this thing down, way down, like SZ even more, maybe even, like something like that. And then we should be able to reset rotation and scale on this guy too. So Control A, rotation and scale, yep, and everything's cool. So what I think we ought to do here that'll make things much easier, truth be told, is I bet you we'll have a lot better time if we move this curve to like the endpoint to the origin. So let me see if I can do that. Let's go into, and you can see which way the curve is going to. So let's try to go, let's see if we can rotate it in object mode. So R, X, 180. And now let's go into edit mode. If I reset rotation and scale, is it still going? Yes, it is. So we kind of want it to be going in that direction. And so for that reason too, let's go into edit mode. Let's Shift S, cursor to selected. Now go back into object mode and say origin to cursor. Whoops. What the heck? Shift S, cursor to selected. Shift S, origin to cursor. There we go. And now again, just because I'm crazy, rotation and scale. So now we have it the curve going at the end there. And now what I'll do is I'll Alt G, and that'll put it right back at the origin there. So I think this is going to serve us better for the array working. You wouldn't have to do this, but it's probably going to make it easier later when we want to adjust the length of this thing. So let's try it like this. So now what we need to do is we just need to add some modifiers. It's about as simple as that. Let's add first an array to our chain. So grab an array, and we know that we're going up in the Z, right? And we've reset the rotation and scale. So this offset of 1, it's X, Y, Z, isn't going to work. So just hover over that and hit backspace and click there and hit 1. We'll just do an offset of 1 for right now. And if you want, you could even line it up right now. So I'll start dragging and I'll hold Shift to get those to line up. So I'll start dragging, whoa, and then hold Shift. That's going to be fine for now. And it's already kind of going, right? But the problem is it's not attached to the curve. So what we need to do to make that it's just an array. This curve has nothing to do with it at this point in time. So what we're going to do is grab that, and we need to just put a curve modifier under deform, curve. It's almost as simple as that. And you just need to select the object, and it's going to be the curve object that we're deforming it to. And now immediately you see the curve, the chain jumps to the curve. But there's still a problem. The problem is we have to set the correct deformation axis. And so once we set it to Z, we are in good shape. If you're having issues figuring out which axes, please reset your rotation. That's going to fix it. So yeah, everything's cool. So now literally all we have to do is make one more change here because it's here, but it's not fitting to the curve. And that's very simple to do. All we do is go back to the chain, go to the array modifier, and instead of fixed count, say fit curve. And again, sample the curve. Boom. Now it's going to give us a count that fits the curve. And so the length of the curve will determine how many there are. If I take this curve now and I grab these verts, and then let's go ahead and grab, I want to grab the middle verts. I don't want those ones. I just want to delete the ones in the middle, and we can work with, we can add some more later. It's trying it, well, what did it do? Yeah, it's trying its best to make those two chain segments, because it's two, remember, fit. So if I lengthen this curve by just moving it and making it longer or shorter, it removes. Pretty slick stuff. So the last thing we want to do is we want to be able to move them together, and we don't want to have to select them both each time, because watch, if I start to move this curve, look what happens. The chain kind of comes off of it. So to fix that, let's go ahead and select the chain, select the curve, Control P to set parent to object. And now when we move the curve, the chain goes with it, and everything is super cool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's a little long. Let's go ahead and unisolate everything, and we can't see anything because it's hidden inside. So let's grab the curve and let's just move it straight down in the Z. And let's, no, not delete, you silly thing. Let's go ahead and give it a name. So let's call this chain underscore curve, and we're going to simply call this one, it's hidden under here in the hierarchy now because it's parented. So we'll call it just chain. Cool. Now, the chain doesn't look big enough to me. There's a few ways we could do it. We should, I'm going to save real quick, we should just be able to go into edit mode here, since the origin's going with it now, and simply fatten these guys up. I don't want to put a scale value on it, so I'm going to do it in edit mode. So we could just simply scale them from that medium point, and it would do the job. So let's do that. Let's scale them up a little bit. And I'm going to see my whole Keyblade here so we can see what's going on. So scale it up just a little bit, like that, and then maybe Alt-S and fatten it. Whoa, Alt-S and hold Shift and go the right direction to fatten it up. And now it's looking kind of cool. And now we can adjust the, if it's like not fitting properly in our array modifier still. So let's make sure that's all jiving well. Yeah, that's fine. Won't be able to tell. There's a small gap in there. Which way is it, I wonder? Is it down? No, it's up. So 0.825, something like that. Perfect. All right, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's call 8 good, guys, and we have our chain. So let's move it up, whoops, in that axis, and let's go ahead and make something for it to attach to. I'm just going to take this chain and duplicate it. Okay, let's isolate it, and let's get rid of all the modifiers here. So we're just going to get back to what we had, and let's go into face mode. Deselect, or sorry, grab all that, delete all that, and Alt-Z, delete these guys, and come back out with it. And let's bring it up. This is going to be our little attachment point. It's going to be this. So it's going to be bigger than the chain by a good amount. What would be cool is if we actually grabbed these verts, Alt-Z, grab these verts, G-Z to bring them down, and make it not so tall, because it doesn't need to be that tall. And the other thing we could do, which is pretty slick, is we could, with this selection, Shift-S, cursor to selected, and then we could go Shift-S, origin to cursor. And now we could grab this object, grab that face, Shift-S, cursor to selected, grab this thing, and Shift-S, selection to cursor offset. Boom, and now it's going to snap it right to that face there. Let's go ahead and RZ90 and reset. Actually, let's go ahead and scale it a bit. I don't know, it's like, it's going to be too long, but we need to scale it up. So let's scale it up quite a bit. Something like that. Looking at my reference, maybe a little bit more, and then let's push it in the Z. So it's kind of like that, maybe a little bit more. Up in the Z a bit more, and then in face mode, Alt-S, and then make it not so fat, but fatter than the chain, maybe something like that. Cool, and now Alt-Z, we have too much. Now this isn't normally a problem, but if we're game artists, then all of this stuff that's penetrating inside the mesh would be wasted UV space. So for that reason, I'm going to GG and just slide this stuff down until it just penetrates. And we're going to call that good. Let's do the same trick. Cursor to selected, object mode, origin to cursor. And now let's reset rotation and scale. So now we're good to go. And also let's see, which way do we want the rotation? Yeah, that's the way we want it rotated. We want it the opposite way. So we can always turn this curve any way we want. We could do that right now. In fact, RZ90, and whoops. Oh, this is still parented. So select this attachment point and Alt-P and say clear parent and keep transformation. And now you can go RZ90 on the curve. It was still parented underneath that thing. And let's call this, we could just collapse this into this object up here. Do we have any modifiers up here? We don't. So let's go ahead and just attach this to this. So Control J, good stuff. And because there was no material on the other thing, when we attached it, it automatically applied the hilt material to all the faces. So we're in good shape there. Cool. We can make the keychain in a bit. That's going to be a bit more in depth. So we'll save that for just in a bit. All right, let's go ahead and do the Mickey keychain part. And we could do it this way. If you show me in the comments if you want to see another way using the voxel remesher, doing this doughier, rounder style. But we're going to go ahead and do a style like this. And first, let's go ahead and add a material to our chain. We'll put the light metal material on that. All right, super cool. So let's work on the Mickey. And to do that, we're going to hit Shift-C to make sure that we're reset there on the cursor, and then hit Shift-A, and we're going to actually add a mesh circle again to do this. And let's leave it at 32 so we have enough going on there. And let's just scale it way the heck down. And RX90 to rotate it on the X, and let's isolate it so we can kind of see what we're doing. And we can scale this after the fact, but let's leave it here for now. So what we'll do here is we'll do kind of what we've been doing. Go ahead and Shift D to duplicate all of these and then scale them way down. And we're going to kind of just eyeball this thing to see what looks like a good Mickey ear size. Something probably like that, actually. The only trick is Mickey, it's not perfectly round there, but we'll deal with that in a second. So let's get it attached up first, and then we'll squash it. So let's do the trick we've done before. Let's see where we can attach this guy. I think probably down here might be the way to go. So let's go ahead and just make that the active vertex, active, and then machine tools, active. And let's just make sure we're on a global orientation though, and go ahead and hit G and then hold Control to snap it there. And then we're going to hit R, and we're going to see where we want this thing to attach. How thick is it? That attachment point. I think if we went all the way over here, that's probably too close. I think we need to go like that. So let's go in here and hit R. And I was holding Shift, but I think I won't hold Shift anymore. We'll do something like that. Cool. Now what we can do is we're going to grab, let's see, all of these verts except for this one. And we're going to delete these ones. So delete vertices. And this vert, well, we can delete this edge. So go ahead and go into edge mode and say delete edge. Now let's grab this vert, grab it, and hold Control to snap it there. And we'll go ahead and leave our active element on for now. We may have need of it. So that's going to be fairly good. Now what we can do to squash this thing before we mirror it is we'll go ahead and grab both of these. And let's go ahead and Shift S, cursor to selected. And if, let me see, this one's probably going out perfectly in that. So let's cursor selected to that. And then I wonder if we can move it down here now. And will it let us? Yes, it will. It'll keep that orientation. So use machine. If you have machine tools, when you cursor to selected, it'll orient also to the thing. So select this one, cursor to selected, then select these two, cursor to selected, and it won't change that orientation. And now we can go ahead and grab all of these and leave our active element there, because if I show you the scale tool, we need it to be at the active element, and we need to make an active element. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to also change, let's just make it all to cursor. So just go cursor, cursor. And now we won't have any problems. So now let's start to scale it down in the Z. And just squash it just a little bit. Almost like I should scale it up a bit too, but we're kind of past that point now. So do something like that. Let's not get carried away. All right. Yeah, if we scale it, we could scale it a little bit. What do you guys think? All right, so another way you can not use the mirror modifier, just so we can check this, is you could type F3 and start to type symmetrize. And there's a symmetrize function. I have it mapped to, in fact, if I search for it, symmetrize, you'll see that I have it mapped to Shift V. So that's just my personal way of doing it. So Shift V, and let's get it going in the right direction. It's going to be positive to negative X. And that's actually looking pretty good. So we could do that, but I'm going to undo that because we're going to use a mirror modifier instead. So let's go ahead and select everything and then X merge by distance, or Alt M in your case, merge by distance, and so on, etc. All right, cool. So the next thing we can do is we have our origin right where we want it. Let's just mirror it. So this time I'm going to use hard ops. So in object mode, if I hit Shift V, we get a mirror modifier. And let's see what is not working there. It's flipped and it shouldn't be. So we are all good. And clipping is set up, and hard ops does all the things you want it to do. The next thing we need to do is we actually do need to fill this with a face. So let's go ahead and select everything and then hit F to fill it. Also, hard ops puts you in your edit mode toggle, so you can see what's going on. It's up to you guys what you want to do about that. Now, the other thing we can do, more hard ops, let's do Shift Q, and you could add a solidify modifier a number of ways. I'm going to do it in hard ops because then I can just start dragging, and I can say, all right, that's about how thick I want this keychain to be for now. Let's go ahead and not forget about our auto smoothing. We'll put it at 45, and that should do the job. So now we have a great start on this. So let's come back out. Let's assign it the same material, be the light metal, and let's go ahead and move it down. Whoa, not in the cursor direction. Let's go back to global, global and medium point, and down here. Now that's way too big, like way too big. So let's go ahead and scale it. So you just hit S. Whoops. Now I don't know if this is going to mess with our solidify, but we'll cross that when we come to it. It's not. When we reset it, it might, but whatever. All right, let's see. How big is this chain? It's probably a little bit bigger than that. Probably something like that. We'll run with it for now. So let's watch our solidify modifier. So yeah, it's just going to thicken it out a little bit more. And it's probably okay, but if you want to adjust it, go back into the modifier panel and just start dragging on thickness. Whoops. And get it like there. So it's going from there to there. Cool. All right. Now what we want to do is make an attachment point. You know, honestly, like there's a number of ways we could do this. Let's isolate this thing. So we don't have access to these faces because we have a solidify. So all we have is this shape, and then we're using modifiers to build it. So let's just make a separate piece. That's what we've been doing so far, and just jam it in. Let's just grab this piece, grab these faces. Shift D to duplicate them. Just right click to drop them, and then hit P, separate selection, go into object mode, and make sure that you have the right thing selected, and then just move it down. Let's just grab both these objects. Let's first fix this material. So we're going to grab in the material slot, we're going to choose an existing material, and it's going to be this one. And now let's go ahead and just rotate this guy. So what is it? We need that one in the 180 direction. And then we need RZ90. And then we need to scale it way down. And we need to bring it way down. And we're just going to do it like this. Now we can't get it perfectly because we don't have an origin or anything to snap it to in the middle of this thing. See, the origin's in the back, so we'll just eyeball it here. Go into wireframe mode, and whoops, wrong one. Pull this forward. And just like right there. That's fine. We don't need to be crazy, guys. No one will ever notice this. I do like being precise, but no one will notice this. Okay. So that's probably about right. Let's reset rotation and scale. Let's also parent it. So select this one, select the Mickey face, and Control P to parent to object. So now we can move that object around, and this object remains separate. Okay, so Shift S, or Shift F, my bad. And it looks like, oh, it's solidified forward, so it's actually centered, but the origin, you know. So let's move it back. Something like that, and it's actually kind of right in there. Let's go GZ, move it up just a little. Cool. So that's looking good. All right, Mickey is in the house. Very cool. That is a big Mickey Mouse. We will maybe take another, like if you look at it though, look how big this is in compared to the size of his hand. It's like enormous. I think maybe our handle's a little skinny. let's address some of that. So grab all these objects, grab this object, and let's go into isolation mode so we can see what we're doing. Go ahead and grab all of this, and now let's go into front view, Shift S, and hit B for box select, and just grab all of this stuff. Okay, and then Shift Z so we can see what we're doing. I think I said Shift S a minute ago, and I didn't mean to say Shift S. The issue with this is if we scale it uniformly, it's going to do that. And if we scale it not in the Z, it's going to do that. And it's going to kind of mess up our perfect little triangle guys there. That's not going to work. So let's grab just this object. Sorry, guys. Let's go one more level deeper here and go into face mode. Shift Z, B for box select. Get these. And go ahead and Shift Z. And then now, with a global alignment, we can S, Shift Z, and scale them out quite a bit. And that'll be good. Likewise, I think we could bring this up a little bit. So let's grab this one right in the middle and Shift plus a couple of times. Plus, and this one. And now GZ up a little bit. Something like that. It's a little nitpicky. So let's step back out one more time. And now we've scaled this out. So that's given us some room to do something with this. S, Shift Z. And that's looking pretty cool. So we'll just leave it at that. I'm going to leave the scale value on these things just in case I want to undo it, because I could hit Alt S and it would go back to the way that it was. So that would be fine with me. Although, wait a minute. Yeah, this guy has a scale value on him already that we need to get rid of. See, those scale values will get you. You watch out. So Shift Z, pull it out quite a bit. And now let's go back. And now we have a beefier handle. That's looking pretty good. Doing what it's supposed to do. So that's helping things a bit. And now let's go ahead and finish up this part. So you can see that we're going to ignore our other reference because there's a lot of different approaches to this area. Like even, there's this with the 2 rings. There's this with the 2 rings, and then this little lip, and then the 2 rings. We're going to probably go for something like this. We'll probably not even bother with that bottom blue ring there, but we're going to do like 2 rings, 2 rings, and just call it good. So we'll make this quick. To start, let's go ahead and hit edge mode, and then G and the Z, bring it down to about there. Yeah, we already have our 2 rings here. I'm not sure if I did that on camera or not, but we're about to do the same thing. So it's going to be really straightforward. I am, however, going to hit plus a few times, Control plus, and I'm going to GZ move that down a little bit and close that gap, because that gap shouldn't be quite so heinous. So let's go ahead and go back into edge mode, and let's Alt Z so we can see what we're doing. And I'm going to Control R, and you won't see anything, but there's a preview of the edge slide up there. Go ahead and click once and drag it down. Let's get it about where those other ones were, and then go ahead and do it again. Control R, grab it down. And wife's sending me GIFs. All right, cool. Or GIFs, whichever you like. Let's call that probably good. And now let's go ahead and we can actually be crazy. And what we will do is grab all of these faces and hit Y to split them. So now they're split. Now what I can do is hide them, and I can get this out of here and GG just edge slide it up or move it up in the Z or whatever, and then Alt H to unhide. And we can grab these faces here, that loop, and then Shift D to duplicate them, pull them straight up, go into vert mode, get an active vert, and go into active and G and snap them down to here. And then likewise we could grab that loop as well, just to be sure. We'll grab edges, make sure there's an active one. And in fact, what we could do, we don't even have to do that. We could just grab this loop, grab at one single edge on this loop down here, which is hard to see, but It's there. Now Alt A and just slam it to the bottom and then go into vert mode, merge them. Cool. Can already tell these are probably too fat, but we'll deal with that in a second. So let's take a look at them. Let's go ahead and push them out. So go ahead and Alt E, extrude faces along normals, push them out a little bit, and they're definitely too fat. Let's push them out just a hair more. Something like that, maybe. That might be too much also. Yeah, Alt E, along normals, push them out. Something like that, that'll be fine. But they're too tall, right? So they're a little too muscular there. So what we can do is go into your pivot and say individual origins. We'll just change it to a global as well. So global with individual origins. And now you can S, Z, and you can scale them individually to themselves in the Z. But first, we'll go ahead and hit Control plus, and then SZ, and we'll scale them down. Then we can go into face mode and Alt Z, and then we can hold Control to pull that selection off, and then hit GZ and close that gap quite a bit. All right, cool. Now, if you had these faces selected still and you're happy with it, you could hit 2. Or you could with faces, and that's the machine smart face, by the way. Or you could go up here to select and select all by select loops, select boundary loop, and that'll do the same thing as with a face selection, a loop face selection in machine tools hitting 2. And we're going to hit Control B and start to bevel. And let's give it like that many, pull it down, round it out. You guys know the deal. And we'll give it, that's probably going to be pretty good. And our auto smooth isn't catching, so everything's cool. Oh, I spoke too soon. Let's make sure our auto smooth is grabbing everything. And we don't have any custom normals. Nope. So just needed an auto smooth angle there for whatever reason. But everything's fixed now. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and grab this edge loop and just simply extrude it straight down in the Z until it just pushes into that bottom part. Grab this whole thing and go ahead and split it off, Y, and now it's split. And we can scale this out a little bit because I think it's too big. You know, like if we look at, you know, what's happening here, it's kind of fluting out. Other references are doing other things. So we'll find our way here the way we want it to be. But in face mode with these guys selected, we're going to S, and we can get off of our individual origins and go back to medium point, even though in this case it would be fine. S, Shift Z, scale it out to make it beefier. And we could even, that's probably going to be okay, guys. The look of that, I don't really mind it at all. We can actually scale these guys in if we do anything. But I don't think we need to go there. We could probably do something cool with it, though. Let's do something else. Let's go here and Alt Z again and just GG to edge slide it up a little bit. Go ahead and hit E and then right click S, Shift Z to scale that out, and then E and bring it down in the Z. GZ. Yeah. The extrusion already had happened, so I figured might as well go with it. Let's go ahead and grab this face loop and GZ, move it up a hair, maybe a little bit more looking at it here. Something like that, and then maybe we'll actually scale this out. S, Shift Z, scale that out a little bit, and go ahead and hit 2, and then what is it? Shift Alt to get rid of that edge loop. And we have that edge loop, so now we'll S, and now we have, it doesn't matter if we Shift Z at this point because it's only going to scale to itself, so it can only scale out to the center like that. However, we went in a little further than we needed, so GG to slide it up, get it close. A little bit nitpicky, but S, Z, and scale it out like this. Sweet. And we'll do stuff now. So let's go ahead and drop an edge loop right in the middle. Also, let's hit it with the material. So Control plus a few times. And I've already made one, but we're going to make a new one. There we go. Now I'm just going to, don't mind what I'm doing here. I'm just purging that so it's not on our material list. So what we need now is we have this blade with material on it, but what we need is a new slot. So let's go ahead and hit plus to make a new material slot. And then we don't have a material, so we need to make a new one. We don't have the material we want anyway. Let's call it blue metal. And let's go down to the color and let's make it a nice blue color. Something like that, make it metallic. Probably bring it down to like 0.35. And why is nothing happening? Well, that's because we don't have any faces assigned to this material. So go into edit mode with this selection still. Now these buttons change. Now the assign button pops up, go ahead and hit assign. And that color looks pretty good to me. We're gonna run with that color even. Now if you wanted to be extra prepared, we could go down and hover over the color, Control C, come up to the material color, Control V, crank up the metallic, and then, whoops, not the specular, leave that at 0.5, change the roughness to 0.35. And now when we go into Eevee mode, you'll see that we haven't set up any of our other materials except for this one. But now we're prepared. So anyway, now let's start doing some stuff. So let's go ahead and bevel this guy off first. So just Control B to bevel it. Let's make it a pretty tight bevel corner here. I don't think too round. Maybe something like this. Probably get away with that, but we'll add one more just for good measure. And we've got something like that now. I want to see another way to do it. We could drop an edge loop right in the middle, let it go, scale it in like pretty far, and we could bevel that edge loop off, of course, and going up until we have one in the middle. So I'm looking for about even on these quads, and that's going to be pretty good. Cool, with a profile of 0.5 as well. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's go up to an odd number, like I was saying. 2, 3. Yeah. So anyway, so there we go. So that's all finished, and things are looking pretty good. All right. The next thing we need to do is we're going to go up to the top, and we're going to start adding in some details. So if you look at some of these, whoops, wrong way. There's like big bevel on this key part. Let's knock that in first. Whoops. So let's go ahead and come up here, and this is all we've got, which is great. Now we can't edge loop. It won't go all the way around because we've got these n-gons here that are messing it up. And in fact, for that reason, I wish I could delete these edges, but they're holding our they're holding that shape. So we're just going to leave it alone. There's no need to mess with it. So Alt-Z, so we can see what we're doing, or not, it doesn't matter. Come up off the mesh here in edit mode, and to get rid of that. And then hit K. Looks like yeah, I know what's going on there, but it's going to be fine. So hit K, come over fairly close, and click, and then you'll start to be able to move. Now what you want to do here is hit C, and if you look down here, whoops, way down here, you can see these options. C equals angle constraint on. If I turn that off, it unlocks, but this will give me my like 15 degrees. And if I hit Z, that will cut through, and that's Z. So now cut through is on, you can see right here. That means when I left click and now hit spacebar to drop it, it's going to cut all the way through the mesh, which is exactly what we want. Pretty handy stuff. So if we get any issues with this angle, we can fix it later. All right, cool. And the reason why we did this, and you'll see here in a second now, what I could do is, let's use the bevel modifier just for the sake of argument. I could go in and manually bevel these things, but let's go to our wrench panel, and let's just throw a bevel right on top of this thing. All right, now everything looks all messed up. Well, there's a few reasons why. We need the bevels after the Boolean. This is a good thing. But what's happening is if I go down here, I guess I have my modifiers panel up here so you guys can see it. It's using a none limited method, which means it's trying to bevel everywhere. If I turn on my wireframe, there's a very small bevel on everything, even these flat ones. That's not what we want. We could do angle, and that'll put it on everywhere that there's this angle threshold. But in this case, we want something very specific. So we're going to put in weight. So what we'll have to do here is we'll finally have to go ahead and collapse this cutter if we want to do it the method this way. And I think we should in this case because it'll just be easier to control. So go ahead and come up and apply the Boolean. Now this cutter is no longer needed, but we're happy with it anyway. So we're fine there. So now go ahead and go into your object with bevel set to weight and go ahead and just start tagging these edges. So grab this edge. It's grabbing edges, you just can't, I don't know what's going on with my display here. What I'm going to do is select all the verts and hit 4 for machine cleanup. Yeah, it's grabbing them, it's just hard to see. Something about my viewport display is, in fact, what we could do is just grab this whole stinking n-gon and hit 2 for machine, and then deselect that guy. And now we have all those boundary edges selected, and let's go ahead and go Control E, edge bevel weight, and crank it up, and now you can immediately see it's taking effect. Also, we need it on the back too, so hit 2 with that face selected, deselect that guy, Control E, edge bevel weight, crank it up. All right, cool. Now it looks shitty. You'd be right to think this, and we're going to fix that. The weighted normals method will fix it, and we just need that modifier first. But first, let's find a width that we're happy with. So come up to offset and go ahead and click and drag. Start dragging. Whoa. I think it's our clamp overlap that's messing us up, so turn that off. It's usually on by default. Yeah, it was. And now we can start to drag. And we can start to get that dialed into something that's mucho better than what we want. That's pretty good. That looks kind of like what's going on there. But let's fix how crappy everything looks. So the next thing we need to do is add a weighted normals modifier. So let's do that. Weighted normals. Immediately everything looks a lot better. You can tell, right? But there's a few problems. The first problem is that we need to crank the weight all the way up to 100. For some reason, nobody knows this. They always run it at 50. 50 is the average between what it was and halfway between where it should be. So it always should be at 100, always. And face influence should always be on. And then almost always keep sharp should be on, because in that case, what's going to happen is your auto smooth. Anywhere you have auto smooth catching hard angles, or you have sharp set up like we do here, it's going to respect that. Watch, when I turn this off, it tries to smooth, weight normals across this, but when we say keep sharp, it's going to respect these sharp edges. And that's exactly what we want. Face influence has to do with this setting in the bevel modifier, which tries to automate face strength, or if you go in and you manually try to set face strengths yourself. And I'm not going to get into too much of that yet. If we go into, where is it? Normals. Select face by strength. Yeah, so it's in your Alt-N menu. So Alt-N, you can say set face strength. Now, if I go select face by strength, medium, you'll see it selects everything. That's because by default, everything is set to face strength of medium. If I go to weak, nothing, there's nothing there. And if I go to strength, nothing's there. Well, what this allows you to do is, I'm not going to do it, but you get a lot of control. And this is a great tip for game modeling. I suggest you guys play with it. Leave me in the comments if you want a full-fledged video on the weighted normals workflow. That's gonna be a doozy, so I'll have to really do something for that. But what you could do is you could go through and start tagging faces. No, you're strong, so you'll receive the influence from the weighted normals modifier, and then any faces that are the result of a bevel you can set to weak, and it will avoid them. So just know that. Now, what we could do right off the bat, the first thing we should do is look at our auto smooth angle. So it's probably too high. And that's part of what's happening here. So immediately, if I bring that down to 30, we're in better shape, 45, we're in better shape, and we're probably in even better shape if I go to 30. So if I turn off our modifier there, you can see there's some pretty good things happening, although we may be catching down here now, yeah. So what I'm going to do here is, let's just, what am I, looks like these faces are flipped. Yeah, so Alt-N, flip, all right. Bizarre. So with this object selected, let's go into our auto smooth, and again, that's either here nor there. It's up here. We could just start dragging on this until it catches. Okay, you could do it in my menu, you could do it in the Z menu as well, and we're just going to start catching. We're going to try to catch that angle, and it's catching like right at 30.2, which is super convenient. Let's make sure there's nowhere else that's getting messed up by that. Okay, and everything else up here is catching. I want to see if we can figure that guy out, though. I wonder if we go up to 31. Let's just make it 31. Then it's going to be nice and soft across that guy. And remember that this is all because of the keep sharp option in the weighted normals. Okay, keep sharp. Let's make sure everything's good. All right. So that is very much in a nutshell the weighted normals, guys. I really want to go over all that with you, but that kind of deserves its own video. for sure. So anyway, but we have some nice things happening up here. Let's go ahead and move on from this, and we'll move on to the next thing. Yeah, see all these nice sharp edges. Yep, super cool. All right, so let's move on down, and our next stop is going to be making the clip.